Hello, everyone. It's 11 o'clock. I hate to interrupt your chatting and connecting with each other. It is time for us to welcome Molly Mendota for our 11 o'clock session.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everybody. It would make me super, super happy if you would scoot closer, because this room makes me really nervous. And if you choose not to, that's fine. But I would really love it if I felt like I was in a more in smaller space. Okay. Thank you for being here. This is the power of peer support for pregnant and postpartum parents, which I credit Tara with the alliteration of the program title. So a little bit about me and my background. I was a birth worker have been, it's not past tense, I've been a birth worker for over 20 years, doula, childbirth educator, doula trainer. So I've been in this perinatal space for a long time. And went back to school and got my master's in social work in 2023. And that came out of 20 years of working with people through pregnancy and birth, and then within a couple weeks after birth being like, okay, bye, good luck. And knowing that that often didn't go super well. And then I would come back and hear about it when they had their next baby, or yeah. So I was inspired to do more in that postpartum and mental health place. I'm currently working as a perinatal social worker for Tandem, which I am advertising and presenting for today, and also at IU Health with the perinatal substance use program there. And I'm a single mom, and this is a picture of me and my daughter. And that's a big part of my identity and related to the presentation today, because for 14 years now, since having her, I've across the board had lots of people constantly saying to me, like, oh, you're a single mom, I don't know how you do it, it's so hard to be a single mom. And my answer to that is always like, yeah, I'm a single parent, but I'm not doing it alone. Nobody can do it alone. It's not an alone kind of thing. I also want to say just a little bit about my lens and background as parent support focused. So another thing that I often get from other people as a doula was like, oh, you must really love babies. Babies are so great. You're a doula, you get to work with babies. And I'm like, babies. They're cute. They're great. I like them. But I really like the parents. I'm in it for the parents. So that's what I get to do now. That's what I love about it. So I have at this table my panel, which you'll meet later. I have on here, oh, I was going to say something more about Tandem. This is awkward. Okay, since I started talking about the panel, I will let them introduce themselves later since they're sitting at the table, but I have group members, so I am here mostly to talk about our mental health support groups at Tandem, and I have some group members to talk later, so I'll let them introduce themselves later. Tandem is a community center that provides trauma-informed gynecology and perinatal care. We have postpartum doula services, a variety of different community outreach programs. We have a community space where we have classes and groups and people can just drop in and hang out. We have a free room with all kinds of baby supplies, baby clothes, maternity clothes, up to age 5 stuff. And then we have the mental health therapy and support groups, which I provide. Okay, and then I want to know who's in the room. So how many of you in the room are parents? Okay, awesome. And how many in the room work somewhere in the pregnancy or postpartum area? Or have? Okay, and how many in the room work with peer support in some way? Okay, awesome. What else? What am I missing? Yeah. Pediatrics? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. What else? Anything else I miss? You feel like you fit into one of those categories somehow? Okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about perinatal mental health. This is going to be the very briefest overview. First, I want to say perinatal. I've said that word 6 times already. Perinatal means pregnancy through the first year postpartum. So it's inclusive of that whole time frame, which is really important. I love the word perinatal, but it's hard because a lot of people don't know it. And so I want to use it all the time, but it's not I'm trying to bring it into the normal lexicon that everybody knows. So that's what we're talking about. Anytime during pregnancy through the first year after giving birth. Mood and anxiety disorders. So most people know something about postpartum depression. Like if you talk about perinatal mental health, people are going to be like, oh yeah, postpartum depression. Or sometimes they'll even just say postpartum, which is not a mental health disorder. It's just a time period. Right? But most people know something about that. There are actually 6 different perinatal mood and anxiety disorders that can manifest in different ways, and depression is one of them. Anxiety is another one, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar disorder, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and psychosis. And the onset of any of those conditions during pregnancy or in the first year postpartum is considered a perinatal mood or anxiety disorder. 1 in 5 to 7 birthing people and about 1 in 10 partners have one of these. So it is by far the most common complication of pregnancy for everyone who's connected to a pregnant person or who is a pregnant person. And is very, very, very underreported, underdiagnosed, and undertreated. And some studies show negative impacts on bonding, child development, and family relationships with perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. I am very careful about that piece. So that's some studies, and that's not information that, it's good to know because that is one reason to give parents support and help. But I also know that one symptom of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders is that you feel like a bad parent. And what I tend to see is parents being fantastic parents, giving everything to their parenting, meeting all of their baby's needs, doing a great job, and they feel like they're doing a terrible job. They feel like a terrible parent, and they're not enjoying any of it. So I just want to be really cautious about like what we put out into the world about that like might contribute to this feeling of being bad at this in some way. Nevertheless, we want parents to do the good parenting and enjoy it and feel connected. So that's where the support comes in. So why does social support matter? So with social support, and this is in perceived, so parents who perceive that they have high levels of social support, so that's kind of however they define it. So that can be formal peer support groups, it can be peer coaching relationships, it can be friendships, it can be family, it can, various community, any sort of level of basically non-professional support. People have lower symptoms of depression, anxiety, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress symptoms, increased psychosocial stimulation, nurturing, and consistency in parenting. And so it is associated, when parents have good social support, it's associated with more consistent nurturing and stimulating parenting behaviors. And group and one-to-one peer support has all the elements that are the benefits of group therapy, which the next slide is going to go through that. So peer support offers all of those therapeutic elements. And from an evolutionary perspective, we're not supposed to go through this alone. This is not something like mammals don't do this alone. Historically, humans don't do this alone. It is a very current thing that humans are living in nuclear families, very isolated and feeling like they have to do this all alone. It's not how we evolved to do parenting. So basically what I'm saying here is that with social support, we can impact both mental health and parenting, and it doesn't require a professional. So I'm up here being the professional, but you don't need me. It's really all about supporting each other. These are the therapeutic factors of group support. And I'm going to just let you look at these for a minute and read through them. And because I don't just like standing here talking, I'm going to ask you if you have any questions about any of these or examples of how any of these might play out in a group. Yeah. Corrective recapitulation. So, right. So it's corrective recapitulation of the family group traditionally, meaning that it's like an opportunity to redo social relationships that didn't go very well in the past. So in traditional group therapy, it's having the opportunity to notice when people in group are reminding you of your brother or your mom or your uncle or somebody else, and recreating these kinds of relationships in a contained space where you get to try different things. Basically what that means. Yeah. Yeah, so that's like, in this context, I think of that as being like creating meaning, developing the new identity of being a parent, which is a big part of that first year, and I would argue forever, is sort of adapting to this, like, okay, I have a whole new relationship to a new human being, and I have to find out what that means about me. And so, like, one of the things, we talk a lot in our group about what kind of parent do I want to be? And what examples do I have for that? And how do I become that? We were also just talking right before this about making metaphors out of different developmental things. And so like teething being a metaphor for like working hard to do something, and then you do it and it feels better, but then it happens again. So those kinds of like, how do you sort of apply whatever is going on in your life to kind of this bigger sense of like meaning in the world? Yeah. Catharsis is like emotional release. There's a lot of crying in group. Yeah. Any other questions? Or any of the group members want to give examples of any of these? Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that, thank you, because I just went straight to tears. Yes, and Hannah's also, do you want to come up to this table? That's our fourth panel member back there, but. I'm looking at my notes to see if there's any specific. Oh, the other thing that I wrote down about the corrective recapitulation is about the parent, like how do I want to parent, and parenting differently than I was parented. And so being in a space where it's like, okay, I'm adjusting to this new identity, I'm becoming a parent, I'm trying to figure out how to be a parent. I know I don't want to do what my parents did, but I don't know what I do want to do. I just know what I don't want to do. Yeah, any other thoughts or questions about this one? All right, so I can't even see. I'm gonna step down a little bit. So I'm gonna go through kind of the development. So part of the purpose of this is to tell you all that you can go out and create peer support groups. They don't have to be for pregnant and postpartum people, but that's my thing. So I'm gonna go kind of through where we are at Tandem with the mental health groups and kind of say some things about our process. So in January of 2023, we got a grant from the Department of Mental Health something. I can't remember what the A is. Anybody know? DMHA, what is that? Is this addictions, mental health and addictions. Yeah, okay, thank you. Community Catalyst grant, and so we're a sub-awardee of IU Health. So IU Health got this grant, and they gave part of it to Tandem to do these groups. We started with a weekly 1.5 hour in-person group. And we had a 6-week curriculum. So we did, I think, 2 rounds of this 6-week curriculum where I had a different topic each week. And we did that 2 times through and then realized that that was not working. So then we switched to an open format without a curriculum. And the reason for that was that it was always intended to be an open group where people could come in at any time. They didn't have to sign up for the 6 weeks. They could come in and out at any point. And from my perspective, the curriculum and the topics were open-ended enough that people could do it multiple times, and there was lots of different directions to go with the different topics, and it was not kind of a thing that you did once and then you were done, but that's not how people were perceiving it. So they would kind of pick and choose. Since it was open, they would say, well, I don't want to do that topic, but I do want to do this topic, and then they would do it once, and they'd be like, well, I did that already. And that was not the intent of what the group was supposed to be. So after 2 rounds of the 6 weeks, we just opened it up to not having a curriculum. Within the group, we have people moving in and out of mental health needs. So this is not a therapy group. It is a peer support group. I was not a therapist when I started this group. I am now, but I was not then. And we intentionally called it mental health. It's mental health in pregnancy and postpartum is the title of the group. And that's kind of a mouthful, but I wanted it to be really descriptive of what exactly we were doing. So the focus is mental health, but not therapy. And it's like anybody who is struggling with their mental health, anybody who's curious about mental health, anybody who's had mental health struggles in the past, anybody who is feeling really mentally healthy and wants to come and talk about, I mean, the full range. And so what's been cool about that is that within that, then people have really been able to kind of move in and out. So we've had the full spectrum of people who have like a diagnosable perinatal mood or anxiety disorder and people who are doing pretty good and just adjusting to being parents. And we have the same people moving in and out of both of those things. And so it's been really, that's been a gift and a challenge, honestly, at different times, and we've thought about different ways to maneuver that, but that's kind of how it's set up at this point. From January to May, we had very low attendance. So for those 5 months, I think we had one group where 3 people came, and all of the other groups were 1 or 0 people. We had one person who was so consistent for 5 months. And that is another big piece that I want to, and this has been my experience in the past too, of starting something like this, you have to be really patient. It's going to take some time, so don't give up. Since then, since May of 2023, it's been really well attended. And we added a virtual group in the summer of 2023 because we had people outside of Monroe County wanting to attend, wanting to add a different time of day. So our in-person group is Monday evenings. Our virtual group is Thursdays at noon. So we wanted people wanted a different day and time. And people wanted to be able to attend virtually or from farther away. We also had new parents who just weren't ready to come out with their babies, and they can come virtually too. This year we added a spin-off partner group my groups are for birthing parents, and we spend a lot of time talking about partners in that group, and a lot of that is the partners need a group too. So we added that this year. And we also added a toddler group because we had people, we'd been doing it long enough that we had babies turning 1, and that's a different developmental stage, it's a different parenting stage, different needs of parents, different needs of kids, so we added a toddler group. Right now we have about 20 to 25 active clients, which between the in-person and the virtual group, which is kind of what I consider active is people who are either coming regularly or communicating with me regularly about the fact that they're not coming. So wanting to stay engaged and keep saying that they are coming. And I've done about 60 total intakes in the last almost 2 years. I have all these ideas about how I want to grow in the future. The next group I want to start is a loss group, a perinatal loss group. We've talked about different topical and affinity groups. I would like to do closed therapy groups at some point that's a little more targeted for people who do have diagnosable perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, that's a little more therapy focused. We have started training new facilitators and would really like to expand to different locations and be able to, we would like for you all to take this and do this wherever you are. Have people go do this elsewhere. And then I've talked a little bit about this, but some of the topics that frequently come up in group are identity and identity changes and adaptations at becoming parents, lots about relationships and intimacy, so that's partnerships and also family, extended family relationships, infant development, loss in sort of the big sense, so that can be pregnancy loss, that can be loss of life pre-parent identity, that can be loss of closeness with partners, that can be loss of friendships, all kinds of themes of loss. Birth trauma and past trauma, and then lots about what kind of parent do I want to be. I have to look at my notes and see if there's anything else I wanted to say about that. I don't think so. Okay, so you all get to do group now. So I said it's open group, we don't have a curriculum, we do have kind of a format. So each session we start with a check-in and kind of go around the circle, or the check-in. I introduce a resource. If any of you were in this room for this last, I walked in at the end of the last session. How many of you were in here for the last session? You have a whole bunch of resources. So all of that stuff about regulation skills, those kinds of things. So it can be self-regulation skills, it can be physical resources, anxiety management resources. Sometimes we read a poem. I mean, it's a whole range of things. My group doesn't even know this, but WOMM stands for What's on My Mind, which comes from my daughter's 6th grade teacher. And they would always do What's on My Mind every day. And I really liked it, so I adopted What's on My Mind. And that's just like, what's on your mind? Who's coming in with something you want to talk about? What's going on? And so usually the group just kind of goes from that. And especially at this point, we have enough people who've been attending long enough, they're comfortable with each other, they're comfortable, they kind of know what they want to come in with and talk about. But I usually will be prepared with some kind of prompt. Sometimes I'll bring in an activity, something has come up in a previous group and I'll bring in something about that. Occasionally we have a guest speaker, but usually it's just kind of open-ended discussion. And then we end with a checkout question. So I'm gonna give you all the opportunity to experience this. And I think what I will do is have you do this with yourselves at your tables. If you're sitting at a table by yourself, can you please join someone else and do this with them? So your check-in question is, you can relate this to parenthood if you are a parent and you want to, but just more broadly, think of a time in your life where you were facing something new and challenging. What's something that you needed from other people? And just share that with each other at your tables. And if you have a paper on your tables, you can write them down. Anybody want to share anything from your tables about what you need from other people when you're doing something challenging? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, so they're saying time and taking something off of their plate so that they're able to focus on whatever the challenging thing is, yeah. Uninterrupted time. Yep. And when you know when the time ends, rather than the baby's asleep and you don't know if it's gonna be 10 minutes or an hour and a half. Yeah. Yeah. What else?
I didn't really say this, but I think part of group is being seen, just like having your story being heard and then being seen and then validated.
Yeah, being seen and heard and validated. Yeah. What else? I feel like somebody started to raise their hand. Maybe over here. Am I making? Yeah. Okay. Information sharing, yeah. Yes, yeah, right. So yeah, being a new parent, having no idea what's normal, what to expect, don't know what you're doing. Somebody give me some information. And validation, and in a way that's like, I'm adding this to your thing, tell me if this feels accurate, but that makes you feel competent. That's not sort of like didactic in a way that sort of contributes to the feelings of not knowing what to do, but that sort of adds to your sense of being able to learn this. Can I put those words in your mouth? Yeah.
My cat's right?
I have to come closer to you.
Okay. I'm not the loud. So my cat's my child, right? And I was talking about how having a disability, trying to figure out how to navigate an emergency, and just the huge challenges when something horrible happens, and that can apply to so many situations, and how those challenges happen.
Yeah.
You're in a panic.
Yeah.
And, like those terrifying moments.
Yeah.
And but it's not possible.
Yeah.
Let's say a cat, so then you have
Yeah.
to rely
Yeah.
on the people in
Yeah.
your community.
Yeah.
And are they even going to be available?
Yeah. Yeah.
Luckily they are,
Uh-huh.
but you just
But
don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah. So figuring out how to navigate an emergency, particularly with a disability or with limited access to whatever resources are needed, right? And having to rely on other people to help figure that out. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Anybody else want to share what you need from other people? Okay, so I'm going to introduce a resource. A resource today, since we're talking about connection, is called the Positive Relational Moment. So this is a way to soothe your nervous system through connection, even when you're not actually with another person. So I want you to, before I introduce it, I want you to notice right now, how does your body feel? What sensations do you have in your body? What emotions or thoughts are you having? How would you describe how you feel right now? And just notice that. And then if you're comfortable closing your eyes, you can close your eyes. If you're not, that's fine. I'm going to close my eyes so you don't feel like I'm looking at you. And I want you to think of a time where you felt connected to another human. And it can be a really deep connection with someone you're very close to. It can be somebody you met in the parking lot at the grocery store, or somebody at the gas station, any situation where you felt connected to another human. And I want you to notice that other person. Think about the interaction or the situation. What do you see in that other person and in the situation that you're in? What do you feel in your body? If there's any physical contact in this memory, feel that in your body. What sounds are there? What do you smell? And just sit in that memory for a minute. And then check in with your body and your mind again and see, what do you feel now? Did anything shift in your thoughts, your emotions, sensations in your body? Anybody notice a shift? That you want to share? No, nobody wants to talk about it. Yeah, Hannah.
I actually had pain in my breast and my pelvic floor when we started, and then I felt my body relax as I was thinking about the connection experience and my care for this other person and their openness and care for me, and actually don't feel pain anymore,
Wow.
which is wild. And thank you.
Thank you. So I don't know if everybody heard that. Hannah said that she was actually feeling pain prior to starting this and does not feel pain anymore, which is pretty dramatic. And she's on my panel, but I swear I didn't make her say that. Anybody else want to share anything? I was doing it right along with you, and I just noticed that I felt my feet on the ground. Like, that was the thing that I noticed, that I kind of like got back into my body, because I tend to feel nervous at these things and float a little bit above the stage as I'm walking around. So it was nice to feel a little more grounded. So that's one example of a resource. We do a whole bunch of different kinds, and we can talk more about that when we have questions if you want to. We're not going to do what's on my mind. We're not going to actually have a whole group right now because I want to give the panel a chance to talk. But we would kind of dive into, okay, what's going on? What are you coming in with today? And then I think we'll do a checkout at the end to kind of wrap up this whole thing. So I'm going to come back to that. Okay, so this is the sum up slide. There's some resources on here. Tara, do you know if I can click on these and open up any of these links? No? Okay. Okay, that's okay. Postpartum Support International is probably the best resource for information and resources and support for perinatal mental health related things. So they have trainings for professionals, which are fantastic, and the Indiana State Department of Health funded a bunch of these trainings in 2024, and I have heard that they're funding them in 2025 again. Do you know, is that out yet? Okay. Yes. Yes. So they have the basic perinatal mental health training. They have a partner support training. They have a loss and bereavement training. They have psychotherapy and psychopharmacology training. I mean, they're really fantastic, and there's a good chance that you'll be able to take some of these trainings for free in 2025, funded by the Department of Health. Yeah. They also have online groups, like tons of online support groups for people, so people can go to free online support groups through PSI. And there's groups for partners as well as birthing parents. There's loss groups. There's groups for specific perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. There's adoption groups. There's groups for kids with challenges. There's NICU support. I mean, just all kinds of things. And there's a maternal mental health hotline that is open 24/7, call or text that people can contact anytime to talk about any kind of perinatal mental health related things. Tandem, we have our mental health groups. I put flyers on the back table about Tandem, so if you're interested in that, you can grab those. The Policy Center for Maternal Mental Health is more policy stuff if you're interested in that side of things. The Postpartum Stress Center and Postpartum Progress they're both informational and support resources for parents. Massachusetts General Hospital for Women's Mental Health has a ton of information resources for people. Psychology Today is a good source for finding therapists for people. And you can filter by insurance, and you can filter by location, and you can filter by virtual. So if people are willing to, you probably all know this, it is very hard to find a therapist. Waiting lists are crazy long. But if people are willing to do virtual, there's more options because you can look in the whole state. It is helpful to have, and I should say this about PSI also has a provider directory. It is helpful for somebody who is struggling in pregnancy or postpartum to have a therapist who knows something about the perinatal period, because it is different than other mental health times of life, and people can actually do some damage by not knowing what they're dealing with in the perinatal period. So it's worth looking for someone who knows what they're doing. And then CHAMP is a access line for prescribers. So if any of you are prescribers or are working with prescribers, or are working with clients who need medication and have prescribers who are reluctant to prescribe to them because they are pregnant or breastfeeding, you need to know about CHAMP. Because CHAMP is a resource for people who prescribe medication has perinatal experts. So prescribers can call the CHAMP line and get information about what to prescribe for what conditions, what's safe in pregnancy and breastfeeding, and they know what they're talking about. A lot of prescribers who don't know that period of time will just say, don't take medicine, and that can be worse. So you're not weighing the risks of medicine versus no medicine, you're weighing the risks of medicine versus untreated mental illness, which is also really risky. So that's what CHAMP is. And then, so that's resources. I'm sorry we can't click on any of them. I was going to show them to you, but that's okay. I do think that you will have access to the slides after this, and I don't know if they are hyperlinks, and so if you have access online to the slides, then hopefully you can click on them then. For facilitation for peer support groups, so if you're wanting to start a peer support group, The main thing is the ability to hold space. And holding space is something that I learned as a doula from that woman at that table right over there. She's not looking at me, Georgianne. And basically that means like being able to create an emotional container that can hold whatever happens. And I learned how to do that in birth, which is a really big thing. Very emotional, very physically intense. And that's kind of what it takes to hold a group, is to be able to create something that where whatever comes up is not going to feel like it's too big for the space that we're in. That's its own training, but I love talking about it. So that's kind of the main thing. You don't have to be able to, well, yeah, I'm just going to stop there on that. Things to consider when starting a group. Is it going to be just drop in? Are you going to do intakes, have people register? Do you want people to sign up? Do you want them to just show up? The open versus closed we talked about. So is it kind of drop in, you can come in and out as much as you want, or are you signing up for a particular cohort and you're going to have the same people for X number of sessions? And then curriculum versus open discussion. Having some kind of group agreements, rituals, and expectations for the group. So we actually early in my group created group agreements, and then you probably don't know what they are, right? Like we haven't talked about that in a long time. Maybe we should. We definitely have rituals. Like people come in and they know what to expect. So that is the check-in, the resource. There's kind of this expectation of what we're going to do when we get there. Allowing the group to evolve. So this is sort of back to that patience of kind of, we had 5 months of nobody coming, and then we changed how we were doing the curriculum, and we changed various things throughout the process. So kind of go into it with an idea, but be really flexible with what happens based on the needs of the people that are in the room, because it's really just about them. They're creating it. You're holding the space. When you're thinking about time, I would plan on doubling, like however much time you're planning for the group, double that for prep. And well, actually double it. So ultimately have at least, so if you're having an hour a week group, plan for at least 2 hours a week once you get going, but at first, 2 hours plus the hour of group time per week for prep. And that doesn't count the sort of setup and cleanup. So you're gonna, I mean, really you need to kind of think about time. I don't feel like I'm saying that very clearly. Do you get what I'm saying with that? Okay. And then it's not a therapy group, but think about referrals. So if you do have, like think, who are you gonna send people to if they need something more than what's available in the group? Okay. Let's let you talk to some people who actually have experienced this. Y'all want to come up? So I'm going to let these folks introduce themselves. I'm going to give you this. Yeah. And then you all can ask them questions. So all of these lovely mamas have been coming to group for a while. And I have some prompt questions if you all don't, but I really want you all to ask them questions, and it can be, yeah, kind of whatever. So yeah, let's start with.
They're gonna share.
Okay.
She's gonna hold the baby.
Okay. All right, that works. Okay. Do you want to start? Introduce yourself.
whatever
So you can say your name, say anything you want to say about your baby, or babies, and what brought you to group, and that you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah. My name's Nikki. I have 3 kiddos, and I had a traumatic birth with my 5-year-old, and I had PTSD after her birth, and PPD, and anxiety, and it was also the pandemic, so there was just all that cluster. And so I just really wanted to do something different when I found myself pregnant again. I was also going for a VBAC, which is very, very challenging, I felt like, in Indiana, especially as like an old mom. And so I just needed that support. And I don't even know how I found out about the group. I had been like working with Tandem, and then I like saw it and I was like, okay, I'll show up. And it ended up just being like a really yeah, I don't even know how to explain like what it did, but it did something where I just felt, I hate using the word empowered because it wasn't empowered, but it was like, it shifted the way I looked at myself in this like system of moms versus a medical system. And yeah, it's been great. I don't know. I can go on a lot, so I'll just pass it on.
I'm Rebecca. I have a 13-month-old named Joanna, and my doula told me about the support group. It was after Joanna was born, so I didn't participate while I was pregnant. I started going when she was 5 weeks old, and I was doing pretty well at that time, but I'd struggled with my mental health in the past, and so I wanted to kind of give myself a space where I could go just in case things got harder, and they did. So I am glad that I was already participating in the group when I started to struggle.
How's that? Okay. Hi, I'm Hannah. I have a 1-year-old named Amelia. She is. I only have one child. I think I actually first heard of Tandem on a Monroe County Public Library, like they're having a get to know a doula event. And then I was looking for a doula, and I think the doula recommended, sort of like, I think I heard about Tandem from a variety of people. And I tried to get into the mental health group at the end of my pregnancy because I was trying to put things in place like Rebecca mentioned, because I'd struggled with my mental health in the past and I knew I was trying to just like line up every support I could. So I got a therapist, and I wanted to join the group, but it was hard for me to do with my work schedule. So I didn't end up getting to go until after the baby was born, and I was able to go to the virtual groups at first, and then able to attend the in-person groups eventually. And it was like a really big deal because it was except for the doctor's appointments with the pediatrician, it was my like first time taking the baby out of the house, and then going to this space that became very special.
I'm Phoebe, and this is Lucian. He's 8 months old. I have a long history of anxiety. I'm on the kind of hermit end of the spectrum, and I'm not from here, so I don't really have a community. So actually, my mom made me promise that I would find community once the baby was born, and I actually found out about it because I went to the postpartum yoga classes. And unfortunately, money isn't a resource that I have a lot of, so I couldn't keep going to those. But one of the moms who was going to those told me about the group, and I think it obviously being free and so accessible, like the smallest impediment, like to doing anything, especially in those early months, is like enough for you to like, I think I lived 30 minutes away, and I did drive there one day, and like, I don't know, maybe the red light was too long or something like that, and I was like, I just can't, and I turned around and go. So like, I think that, the group is very accessible, and the moms are, have opened themselves up to everyone, and so yeah, it's been really great.
So what do you all want to know from these folks? Wildly open-ended.
How has this group impacted your social connections, either with each other or the way that you interact with others outside?
Should I repeat the question? I'll repeat the question. How has this group impacted your social connections, either with each other in the group or outside of the group?
Yeah, I went from zero to like a community. I have, like I said, I'm not from here, and my husband's family is from here, and they are great. but they are still in-laws, and so it's been like so crucial for me to have a village from really nothing.
I will also say we have a very active mom chat that is like, I could literally go to my phone right now. There's probably like 20 missed notifications, which I think sometimes people like scoff at, or even having like a social media group. But it really is something when you like always have this notification that there are other moms that know you and are thinking about you. And at 4 a.m, you can absolutely text people, someone's up. And that I think is kind of overlooked. And I don't think that was like necessarily like, I don't know, maybe it was part of the plan.
No, I should say that was definitely not part of the plan. And I have nothing to do with it. So that's something that they created completely separate from the group and from Tandem. By making those social connections, they decided they wanted to share each other's contact information. And now you guys are having Thanksgiving together, right? Like there's like a whole, it's
Friendsgiving, yeah.
Yeah.
We do like monthly meetups as well. There's always like, hey, who wants to go to the apple orchard? Who wants to go to the pumpkin patch? With also the understanding that if a kid gets sick or if a baby's just not feeling it, like there's not going to be a bunch of shame, I think, if you're like, I got to drop out, like I can't do it. Where sometimes there can be with people that aren't in this like phase of life.
I actually went through a period where I wasn't able to come to group as often, and then I started feeling really anxious about, like, I had general anxiety, but I started like applying that anxiety in many places, and one of them was to the like social aspect of the group and feeling like nobody liked me and I didn't show up enough, and then I don't know, I just kind of made myself try again to go, and like Molly never made me feel bad for like not getting to come, and was always in touch when, hey, I haven't seen you in 2 weeks, and and I would often be late because I was trying to get there from after work, and like Molly, just no one ever gave me a hard time, and I went back and I realized like, oh, like nobody hates me and everything's fine and like I'm still welcome here, and it like that experience I think did reduce my overall social anxiety, not just with the group but also like in the world.
I'm glad you shared that, Hannah, because I realized when I was talking about the benefits of group and the therapeutic factors and all of that, is that, and this is related to holding space, is that there also is the possibility of negative social comparison and feeling left out, and not everybody likes each other, right? You don't want to be friends with everybody just because they also have a baby. And so that's not, there's a lot of things that have gone really well in that way with the particular group of people that we have. I don't expect that to always be true. There are people who have come in and out of group and not come back, and we don't always know why. And so that's something to sort of be aware of as facilitators too, that it also is very important to me that I am not part of that. Like that is not what I'm facilitating. That is their thing and their choice. So. What else? I feel like, yeah. So the question is, does Tandem provide childcare when we host groups? No, we do not. And that is largely due to space at this point. We don't have anywhere to do it separately from the group. And we've talked about that for my group, that because we do have people with older kids, and we have had people not be able to come to group because they can't bring their older kids. We would need a space where the older kids could be somewhere with a safe caregiver and not hear what's going on in the group, because it's really important that the group content stays private. So just in terms of like what our building is like at this point, we're not able to do that, but we recognize that as a barrier. Most things that Tandem does, kids are welcome. And even things like our gynecology appointments, people will bring kids, and there's always, during our open hours, we have a postpartum doula who staffs the open hours, and if there's not something else going on, the postpartum doula will play with the kid while the parent has a gynecology appointment, So there's a lot of, so we try to make those things work, but not for this group.
So I heard you say older kids, so are they allowed to bring their babies to?
Yes. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Yes, babies are welcome in group. And this mental health, we talked about transitioning to the toddler group. Around this, and we're still figuring this out too, but my mental health groups are pregnancy through about a year postpartum, and people are transitioning out somewhere between 12 and 18 months, it seems like, when it kind of feels right. And it kind of go on a case-by-case basis, but we try to be flexible with that too. Yeah, so for the mental health groups, I do have a registration and intake process, and yes, it's online. And so on the Tandem website, there's a services tab, and I think it says classes and groups or something, and there's a button in there to register for the mental health group. Other questions for the panel members? Yeah, Melissa.
How has the group supported your relationships, whether it's a partner or family members?
How's the group supported your relationships with other family members or partners?
I just this is being recorded, so just a side note. We talk about our partners a lot, I think. Molly can attest to that. And I think it kind of, for me, has been this aspect of being able to be seen again in that difficulty. We are, for the most part, the first year is just kind of, there's gender roles that happen, and having other people being able to speak to that and then kind of break some of those and be having different conversations and expectations with our partners has been really nice to hear how other people handle it. Yeah, I think that's been nice, even just to commiserate sometimes and feel seen and oh, this inequality is very real and very felt, has been helpful.
It's taken the burden off of my partner too, I think, to have another outlet of people to talk to who are going through similar things. So he's not my partner and my main source of support, and my, having more outlets has been really helpful.
I think for me, specifically along the partner lines, it's really helpful to have a group of people to essentially vent to that aren't also then going to go and hold that against him, like my mom or my sister, because I don't know, my mom and my sister are, yeah, that's it. It's really helpful to just be able to let some of that stuff go in a safe space.
Something we talk about a lot is how we were raised and how that, whether or not we want to raise our children that way, and talking about ways that we were raised that we don't agree with now. It has helped me feel better towards the people that raised me, I guess. Talking to other people who love their parents but also had some bad experiences, and also being a parent myself now, I felt like it's been pretty healing.
And I will share too that I have had a couple of people come back and say, we talked about this thing in group, and then I went home and talked to my partner about it, or talked to my mom about it, or whatever. And so that and I don't even know if that has been something any of you have experienced, but that also has come up, where it's kind of putting words to it in that space allows it to be taken to another space. Mix of partnered and unpartnered moms. Yes, there have been some of both. I think the current kind of the regulars are all partnered at this point. And actually, single parents group is another one of the spin-off groups that I would like to start, because that is a different kind of set of needs and considerations. But we have had both in this group.
I will say, I think as a single parent too, it would be really difficult. Like that's something that you definitely have to set up for a little bit more. Like I couldn't do this if I didn't have my partner at home, like making dinner, hanging out with the other older kids. Like that's a good point.
And we actually did have somebody who was involved for a while and really wanted to be more involved, but had older kids. And who is a single parent and could come with her baby, but didn't have someone to be with her older kids. So, yeah.
If you experienced a mental barrier to starting group, what did you do to get over that?
If you experienced a mental barrier to starting group, like the red light, Phoebe, what did you do to get over it?
When I first started going, I felt really intimidated by the relationships between the other group members that I could see. They all seemed close to each other and comfortable, and I felt very uncomfortable. But I kept going anyway. I figured that it would just take time, and I would become more comfortable over time as I got to know the other people there, and that is what happened. So I just stuck with it, even though it was uncomfortable at first.
I think when I was first pregnant, I was one of those times that I was like, I was the only person there. And there was definitely this, like, what is the point of this? Like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody has a better, you just like, I don't know why I kept going. Most of the time I wouldn't. Like, to be totally honest, I'm not necessarily like a push through it kind of person. Maybe this was just like the only avenue where I knew I would meet other people in the same circumstance. I just really, really needed it, and I recognized that I really, really needed it. So I kind of like pushed through that discomfort, but usually I would have pieced out, so I don't know. I don't know if you guys have better.
I'm also trying to think, because I had a lot of barriers to coming, which were mostly felt like work. But I think there's a way in which I could. They changed the group time, and I was like, oh, great, now I'll finally be able to go. And then I was like, oh, it's hard to get out of the house regardless of what time group starts. It's just really hard. But I honestly think it was the intake with Molly was very important to me at the time. Like, it was the first time that I was talking to someone about all of my mental health background, plus what had been going on during pregnancy. And I think that my relationship with Molly and the Ty and her not insistent persistence or anything, but just occasional touch point was the thread until I was able to feel more comfortable and make some of the relationships and kind of get through some of the anxiety. So I don't totally know, but that's what I feel like. I remember that sense of that connection with Molly and trust for her.
And I've really had to kind of play with how much to do that. So it's interesting for me to hear, because that kind of find the right level of sort of saying, hey, I'm still thinking about you. Hey, I know you're still out there. So I've done a lot of intakes with people who have never come to group. And in those first 5 months, I probably did 12 intakes in those first 5 months where one person came. And I was those people I was calling. I was come to group, come on, we need you. I was so excited every time somebody registered, and then they didn't come. And that is a balance. I mean, as facilitators, kind of figuring out, I do think it's really important. New parents are so isolated, and isolation just builds on itself. And having somebody say, hey, I'm thinking of you, no pressure. So not this begging you to come, which was, I was especially at first feeling please come to group, but trying not to convey that. But it is really important to say people know you exist. People remember that you're there and care. Yeah.
Can I also say one other thing? I think if feasible within whatever group you're in, to have it weekly, especially during postpartum, is so key, because I felt like there was this sensation of it's every other week, you miss one, and then you're gone for a month, and so much happens, and you're like, out of the loop where like every week it just gives much more opportunity, and it has just like become part of my ritual now. It's like, oh, it's Monday, I'm gonna go touch in and talk to these folks. So if possible, like weekly is like a great timing, I think.
And I feel like in the interest of time, since we're close to wrapping up, I kind of want to end with like anything that you all, this is pretty broad, but like, what do you want this community of people to know about supporting pregnant and postpartum parents? Like, what are messages that you want out in the world about that? I know, I didn't prepare you for this. Sorry. It's okay if you...
I think it's just like really simply, it's been like crucial, absolutely crucial for me. This, and then in the early months, I went to Milk Matters. And between those two things, like my entire experience would be, I can't even imagine postpartum without those things. It would just be TikTok, really. Yeah, and I think, like Molly said, it takes a village, and it's like really hard to find a village, I think, right now. And so this has been my one and main and best access point to that village.
I think for me and my experience, like Phoebe's, is one of gratitude for these resources, and sort of also acknowledging that I have a lot of resources and I'm fairly privileged. I am partnered. I live in a home and I don't have trouble paying my bills. I had maternity leave. I had the ability to breastfeed, and it was still hard. And so I want these resources to be available to everyone. So in thinking about, that's it.
Mine is just for providers, practitioners. Like what you're doing is just to, I think kind of what Molly said, of like keep doing it. Like it just takes so much time. And I think I was thinking about this today as I was driving here. Like postpartum kind of like breaks you open and makes you sometimes realize like the systems in your life that aren't working. And it's the exact moment that you realize you need that village. Like even though we talk about it, and then sometimes moms don't realize like they're the center and core of their village, and then you have a baby and you just can't function that way anymore. And that's then when you're trying to go out and do really hard labor. Like the connections we've made, I think sometimes we talk about it like, oh yeah, we got to check. But like that was labor, right? Like we did a lot of work. We are continuing to do a lot of work to show up to each other, to plan events, like do all these things. And it's a lot to ask somebody in that postpartum period to also do this. So as much as you, if you have this space to do it, to make it easy to do as much labor as you can, to show up every week, even if one person is there or two people are there, or send that text message or send that email. Like I think that is huge, because you're just tapped out and you're having this moment when you're like, oh, shucks. I was the person that did all that labor, and now I can't, and nobody else is doing it for me. And yet I know I need it. So if you can build some of that for people, I think that is huge.
Also thinking about transitions out of support groups. Several of us have babies that are a year old or over a year old now, and we are going to be transitioning out into the toddler group. But, I am really grateful that there is another group to transition to. I don't want to quit going to group. So, yeah, just thinking about what that ending is going to look like for your participants.
Thank you all. So for our checkout question today, everyone in the room, the checkout question is just say one word about the energy that you're holding right now, how you're feeling. One word, and you can just popcorn it. Just anybody throw out words. Just say words. Say them loudly. You don't have to raise your hand. Just shout out words. Relieved. Informed. Grateful. Optimistic. Hungry. All right, I am going to flip to my final slide, which is quotes from our clients. I will let you read them on your own. These are anonymous quotes. I don't actually know if any of these 4 people said any of these quotes, but these are just some quotes about the group. Thank you all for being here. I've got some books up front about perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, about facilitation, about support groups, and then there's Tandem info in the back. So feel free to look at stuff if you want. And thanks for being here.